Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to another episode of Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots for a new generation. So today we're taking a look at a Sonic game, but probably not the Sonic game a lot of people are thinking of. This is through Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection, which I actually talked about sort of as a whole on my last episode. And what we're taking a look at is Sonic Spinball for, well, obviously, the Sega Genesis / Sega Mega Drive. And this is a really strange game. This is a Sonic game, but it's also a video pinball game. And it's kind of weird. Like, this is one of these things that could only have come out of a select few places, one of them being Sega in the 90s, without a doubt. And it's kind of interesting because when you think about Sonic and the mechanics of Sonic, you can kind of actually go, yeah, I could kind of see that working as a video pinball game, you know, kind of what the heck, right? And that's what they did here. This was actually developed by, well, it was developed uncredited by Sega Technical Institute of Comic Zone fame and another developer called Polygames that I've actually never heard of. I don't know much about them. Couldn't find out much about them. And yeah, this is basically a video pinball game with Sonic the Hedgehog, but with a few unique twists on it. This game has kind of mixed opinion of a lot of people. It is... Yeah, there, Sonic, hold on. There's a bit of a mixed opinion on this game. Some people think it's really cool for being so unique and different. Other people think it's actually a pretty weak both Sonic game and pinball game. I kind of am sort of in the middle a little bit. I think this is a really interesting experiment that Sega tried, and while it doesn't hit on all cylinders, it's actually a half-decent video pinball game, especially for the 90s, and it does some stuff that's very different and cool that you haven't really seen anywhere else, even in video pinball. So I thought we'd talk about that. So, there are a handful of levels in this game. There's the toxic sewers, which we're in now. There's a geothermal power station, a robot factory, and a place called the launch pad. And your goal in each of these levels is through basically playing pinball and making changes to the environment by how you do that, to collect all of the what's called Chaos Emeralds in a given level. And when you do that, you open the boss level where you fight Dr. Robotnik. And once you do that, you get yourself a bonus stage, which is kind of a neat little fourth wall breaking thing. And your goal while accomplishing all this is, of course, this being pinball, to score as many points as possible. So, and as you can see here, Sonic is the ball, but this is where things start to differ quite a bit from traditional pinball. So, in lieu of tilting, which is this sort of traditional pinball trope where in order to influence the ball's movement beyond just hitting it with the flippers, you sort of whack the table or give the table a shake to one side or the other, i.e. tilting it, and that will sort of influence the ball's trajectory and affect where it goes. Nuts. And it's a good way, especially of keeping your ball in play when it looks like it's about to lane out. There's no such thing as tilting in this game, but they brought in a rather unique mechanic in lieu of that, which is that by using the directional pad, or in my case the analog stick because I'm playing on a 360, you can actually slightly influence Sonic's movement while he's in flight. So kind of like, I guess the closest analog I can get to this, and unfortunately uses a bit more of a modern game, is the aftertouch mechanic in the later Burnout games, where basically you could sort of influence the movement of your car in crash mode while it was in the air, and you're able to do that by holding the controller to a certain direction while it was traveling, and that's kind of what you do here. So you don't tilt in this game, but you can have a little bit of an impact on where Sonic moves while he's sort of midway between it. It's fairly subtle. You can't, like when he's flying quickly like that down the center of the level, I can't really impact his trajectory to any significant degree. But I can sort of direct him when he's trying to do things like take out those sort of alligator head targets, and when he's trying to move into other more nuanced sections of the level, I actually have the means to influence his direction that way. And that is really cool and really different. Even video pinball games traditionally didn't do things like that. And I think it's a really neat mechanic in lieu of tilting, because a lot of people are not very good at it. You know, tilting is something you have to be very subtle about, especially if you're playing a game that will punish tilters pretty badly. And not everyone's good at it. I mean, I played a lot of pinball in my life, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of suck at it. But in this game, it's not only sort of a required thing, it's not very hard to do. So you see here's one of the environmental changes I made. By hitting these targets, I drain the slime out of that bucket, and if I can get up there, I'll collect that Chaos Emerald, which is one of the objectives of the level and will also equal a whole bunch of extra points. And yeah, it's kind of important to use the directional nuances in this game in order to make Sonic go where you want him to go, but it's easy enough to do, and you can kind of see the result of it fairly quickly as you work with it and get a little bit better with it. So I think that's really cool and different. And there's also weird level hazards like this. So you see, you can actually you don't level out in the traditional sense in this. In most pinball games, there is, see, if you fall down the center lane like that, right, your ball's immediately out and you're done. Well, in this level, what's cool is you can fall down here and recover, and you have a second or two to breathe there, but if you don't move very quickly, this weird sea monster thing comes up from the toxic chemicals and will eat Sonic. So it kind of gives you a second to go, alright, you've recovered here, you haven't laned out yet, but you gotta jump fast, because if you don't, you're kind of boned anyway. So I like the fact that it sort of gives you a little bit of a second chance in that way. It's kind of like a ball save mechanic, and in a lot of modern video pinball games, ball saving is used to a rather generous degree. You know, a lot of games will give you like sometimes 30 seconds to a minute after your ball has launched. Whew, recovered him there. They'll give you 30 seconds to a minute after your ball is launched to sort of, you know, recover yourself, where it will go, oh, if you fall down the center lane here, we'll just count that, you know, we'll just basically give you a free ball for it. It's kind of, not really an everybody gets a trophy kind of thing, but it's not far off. And this kind of does a similar thing, but it does it in the sense that it gives you a little bit of a second to recover, but it doesn't really let you rest on that. And it's like, hey, this isn't a free ball. You gotta, you know, you really got a motor here to make this happen. So I think that's kind of neat as well. Now, all that said, you know, I'm talking quite a lot of hype about this game, and I actually do like it quite a bit, but at the same time, it does have some pretty glaring faults. You probably can see it on the video, though it's probably doesn't look as overtly bad there, but the frame rate in this game is pretty poor. It's kind of low to begin with, and it does get fairly inconsistent, and when you're, especially when Sonic's moving really, really quick through an environmental hazard, it gets downright hard to follow what's going on sometimes. This was a chief criticism of the game, to be sure, and a lot of people also didn't like it in the sense that it's very, you know, it's very slow, it's very floaty. Sonic most certainly doesn't play like real pinball. Sonic, you know, doesn't move like a real pinball. Some people find that a fault, but I mean, if you're looking for a traditional pinball game, you certainly have a lot of other options for that. I mean, this purposely was trying to do something different, and I don't really fault it for that. I mean, they were trying to bridge the line between making this a traditional pinball game and also making it a weird sort of offshoot Sonic game. And if you just made Sonic handle like a traditional ball-bearing pinball, well, then it's not a Sonic game anymore. You know, you have to, if you want people who are familiar with Sonic and how Sonic plays to both enjoy this game and not criticize it, then you really have to maintain a lot of, you know, the mechanics that made Sonic what he is. And they did that here, but they still managed to make it feel enough like a pinball game. You know, it really I guess the main thing I would say about this is that Sonic, in terms of pinball, he really feels like, kind of like how he looks. Like if the pinball was oversized and overweight, basically. If it was a, you know, sort of a not a, quote, regulation size or weight pinball, then that's kind of what he plays like here. And I don't have a problem with that necessarily, because you can get used to that. You know, if you understand the design of, you know, how they expect you to play this game, it's different from traditional pinball, but it's certainly something you can learn and adapt to. And that's what I think is really cool about it, is aside from the fact that this is just so downright crazy, it's really neat as well because they actually made a pinball game that does still feel enough like one, but they put a crazy spin on it that you could only do in video pinball. You know, a game with this crazy environmental change and multiple levels and boss fights and all this other stuff, you couldn't do that in an arcade pinball machine. I mean, it's just not physically possible. And that's what I really like. You know, I love me some pinball simulators. You know, I love video pinball games that do try to duplicate the authentic mechanical experience as best they can. But at the same time, I love video pinball games that take advantage of the fact that this is not a mechanical machine, that this is not the actual physical medium, in order to do cool and different things with it that you couldn't do with a real machine. You know, if you're going to do a video pinball game, then why not, and you're going to do something unique, like or something original, like you're not trying to simulate a real table, then why not go a little wild with it and do something kind of crazy and different, and, you know, give people enough of the traditional formula so that they're like, yeah, this feels like pinball, but at the same time, it's very clearly not, and it's doing its own weird and wonderful things. And that's what this is all about. You know, the Crush series of pinball games as well on the TurboGrafx are also very good examples of this. I'm going to cover those one day soon as well, because they were very similar to this, as they did a whole bunch of crazy different stuff, though they tended to play a little bit more like real pinball, I would say. And yeah, I think it's really cool. You know, it can be a little bit punishing with things like this. There's some of these areas where, like, there's this barrel that can save you from landing in toxic slime, but if you miss that, it's an immediate ball out. But that right there is a little bit more like traditional pinball, you know, and you may get saved on this lower level here, but in other areas it's more like traditional pinball where, oi, you lane out, you're screwed, you know, that's kind of the way it works. And you can actually, if you can land Sonic in that barrel, you can actually, as you saw earlier, you can actually manipulate it and move the barrel around in order to give him a launching point into different areas. So if you save yourself, you're not like, oh, you know, you've only got one way out of here. You can actually do that in multiple ways to try to help yourself complete objectives. So in an interesting way, you can actually lose, or rather lose, well, you can lose, but you can also use a section of the level that would traditionally only be associated with losing your ball in a failure state, and actually sort of game it a little bit and try to purposely land him towards the barrel to launch him in different directions and give yourself an advantage with completing your objectives. So they actually are like, hey, you know, yeah, you could fail out by doing this, but if you're smart about it, you can actually, whoops, gotta recover, alright, got myself a great escape bonus. So if you're smart about it, you actually can recover and take your time and go through the levels, because that's ultimately the thing. You know, you can sit here and faff about and try to get a whole mess of points, and that is, you know, part of what you want to do. But the flip side of that, obviously, is, you know, it's a risk-reward thing. The longer you sit here just banging around the tradition, you know, the sort of basic areas, getting yourself more points, the greater an opportunity you have to fail and run out of balls. And obviously, you also want to complete the objectives and get all the Chaos Emeralds and ultimately fight Dr. Robotnik, because that leads to the biggest points. So it's a little interesting of a risk-reward thing. And, you know, getting these Chaos Emeralds is not that easy. I mean, I'm doing kind of okay here, and I haven't gotten one yet. So, you know, even if you're playing purely an objective-based run, you still might have a bit of a hard time getting through everything. So I like that as well, because it does give this game a fair amount of replay value. I mean, one of the things I love about pinball is the fact that replay in many cases can be almost endless. And that's the case with this as well. Beyond just chasing score, the game gives you reasons to keep coming back, because there are multiple levels that have objectives, and they're not necessarily dead easy objectives to accomplish. So that's kind of neat in its own right, and that's really what you want in a home pinball game, especially one that's trying to be original, is you want a certain amount of replay value, and you want the ability to keep coming back and to see different things all the time. It is a little bit different in the sense that the multiple tables in this game are presented as levels where you know, you have to complete a level in order to get to the next one. It's not like a compilation package of pinball tables where it's like, hey, here's 5 tables, just pick the one you want to play and we'll go to that. You know, it's the progression is required in order to see all the environments in this. But I like that as well, and I think it's just really kind of cool. I'm going to guess that this game did not sell very well back in the day because, well, there wasn't another one. And it as I said, it had, you know, it was kind of met with mixed reviews. Oh, look at this, we're going on a grand tour over here. This game was definitely met with mixed reviews. Some people, as I said, thought it was cool. Some people couldn't overcome its technical shortcomings, of which there are a few. And some people really just thought this was kind of a dumb use of the Sonic IP and character, and that you know, making him into a sort of half-baked, slow-moving pinball game wasn't really the best use of him. But I don't agree with any of that. I think this is a very compelling and very original portrayal of pinball. I think it's actually a good use of Sonic because Sonic as a character, and you know, both as a character and from a mechanical design perspective, is very ideally suited to this. And I think it's actually just kind of fun. I think you have to temper your expectations to what it is, which is that it is a video pinball game that is attempting to be a blend of a fast-moving platformer and a traditional pinball game, but it is not a traditional pinball game. And it's designed to be a little bit slower. You know, people who are pinball purists and are used to fast-moving, lightly weighted balls, yeah, they may not like it, and that's fair. I mean, that's just a personal preference thing, right? And you know, all personal preferences are valid, really, when it comes to this stuff. So, yeah, if you're someone who really is into pinball in the most traditional sense, then yeah, you might find this frustrating or a little sluggish. But if you have a bit more of an open mind and you like to try pinball that's done differently, both in terms of a presentation and a mechanics and system standpoint, I think there's a fair amount to enjoy here. This is a very weird oddity, and well, I mean, it came out of Sega Technical Institute, who, I mean, that's what they did. I mean, look at Comic Zone, you know, STI was all about the odd titles. And I think much like Comic Zone, they created something here that's definitely not for everybody, but for those who can appreciate it, it really feels like a creative home run, if you will. So yeah, that is Sonic Spinball, published by Sega and developed by Polygames and Sega Technical Institute in 1993 for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. You can get this a few different ways. It is out on the Wii Virtual Console. It's actually out on Steam for PC. It is out on iOS, and of course, it is part of numerous Sega retail compilations, including Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for the 360 and the PS3, which is what I'm playing it through. And yeah, I think this is really cool. If you like pinball and you like Sonic, you should give it a try and see if it works for you. My name has been Parallax Abstraction. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.